everyone, Sean here with another tutorial from Cauneaus Arts. Today I'm going to show you how to create glitchy backgrounds in After Effects and use them to add glitchy distortion effects to your projects. And the way these are created, there are infinite possibilities where you can tweak the settings to create completely different looking effects. This stuff is quite easy, but to keep this exercise short and precise, I'm going to split this tutorial in two parts. In the first part, we'll create the background elements, and in the second part, we'll use those elements to create glitch effects for your logo or anything else that you want to add the effects to. I'll post a link to the second part in the description of this video, so don't forget to check that out. And if you don't really care about the intros and are only looking for some ready-to-use cool glitch backgrounds without really requiring to create them from scratch, you can just download them from the links in the video description. And by the way, this is 100% After Effects. No external images, footage or third-party plugins are going to be used in this tutorial. Okay, so let's get started. Let's jump into After Effects. Go to Composition, New Comp, 1920 by 1080 is fine, 30 FPS, okay. Go to Layer, New, Solid, press OK. To create the distortion effects, we're going to create a few displacement maps which we will later use to distort the backgrounds. Let's go to Effect, Noise and Grain, Fractal Noise. Change the noise type to block and change the contrast, make it fairly contrasty, 600. Brightness can go a little higher. Then go to the transform property and turn off uniform scaling. Scale width. If you press shift on your keyboard and drag on this value, it changes a lot faster. So let's change the width to 10,000, which is actually the maximum it can go, and the height to 400. Go to the sub settings property, reduce the sub influence, and now we need to animate this. So alt click on the stopwatch for sub scaling to give it an expression and type in wiggle, open parentheses, 3, 100, close parentheses. 3 is the frequency and 100 is the amplitude at which this is going to animate. And let's also animate the evolution on this. So do the same, I'll click on the stopwatch and let's give it a time expression this time. Time into 1000. Now let's preview this. We've already started getting a nice glitchy background effect on this, but we are not done yet. Go to Effect, Color Correction, CC Toner, and change the highlight to black and the midtones to gray, preferably 50% gray, but it doesn't have to be exact. Press OK. Let's rename this composition to Displacement Map 1. And then let's duplicate this. Open it up, go to the black solid one, and let's alter these settings a little bit. We need to create a couple of variations which we will use later. So let's change the contrast. Let's bring it down a little bit. And let's remove the CC toner from this comp. You don't need it. Bring down the brightness. Let's also bring down the scale width of this. Height can also come down. Let's preview this. Okay, let's go to the sub settings. Maybe add a bit of rotation to this. 95 should be good. and then go to evolution options, and on random seed click on the stopwatch again and give it another expression, time into 20. Enter. Let's preview this. So this is our displacement map 2. Let's create another displacement map. Just duplicate this and let's change the settings on this even more. Let's change the noise type to spline, and let's remove the expression on subscaling, and let's alter these values a little bit. Let's preview this. Okay, so now we have 3 different maps that we can use in our compositions later. So let's keep that aside for now. Let's create a new comp and let's call it glitch effects. Okay. Create a new solid. If you press Ctrl Y on your keyboard, you can create a new solid. Give it another fractal noise. If you go to your effects and presets window and type in fractal, you can get your effect. Change the noise type to block. Or maybe this time we can change it to soft linear. Change the contrast to maybe 1050. Reduce the brightness a little bit. Go to transform. Turn off uniform scaling again. And scale the width of this. Reduce the height to 40. Go to the subsettings and let's keep the subsettings to their default values. Alt click on the stopwatch and type in time into 200. Enter. Let's add a mosaic to this. Go to effect, stylize, mosaic. Keep the horizontal and vertical blocks to 10, the default value, but switch on sharp colors. Then add a tritone. Go to effect, color correction, tritone. Now except for the shadows, you can change any of these 2 colors to any color you wish. So let's make this one orange and this one blue, bright blue. We need to eliminate this black, so let's go to effect, keying, linear color key, and with this picker tool just pick the black in this area and remove it. Now we need to duplicate this a couple of times to create some variations in this. So let's click on this and go to the evolution options of the fractal noise and change the random seed to any other number. You can even alter the settings on this mosaic, and you can change the colors as well to some other colors. Same with the topmost layer. Go to evolution options, change seed. Mosaic can be a lot different this time. 20 is good. This can be more detailed. Okay, now let's pre-compose these 3 layers. You can press Ctrl+Shift+C on your keyboard to pre-compose it and select move all attributes to the new composition. Okay. Now let's drag in these 3 displacement maps to this and switch them off. We don't need them to be visible, but we need them to be in the comp. Let's create a new solid, press Ctrl Y, and let's call it displacement. Bring it at the top. Then go to effect, distort, displacement map. Change this to an adjustment layer by clicking on this black and white circle area under the black and white circle. Let's switch off the transparency. Change the displacement map layer to displacement map 1 and increase the horizontal displacement to any value which seems good to you. And let's preview this. Our background is already starting to glitch because of the displacement map. Now we don't need the displacement map to be on all the time, so you can break the layer into pieces, and you can even duplicate the layer and add the second displacement map to it to give it a bit of a variation when it glitches. And you can play around with these settings. There is a lot of stuff here that you can mess around with. You can even change the vertical displacement a little bit, but I'm not going to do that right now. If you click on wrap pixels around, the image kind of tiles itself on the edges and you don't get broken edges. The image loops seamlessly around the edges. Then you can even duplicate this and go for the third displacement map. Now the colors seem a bit too solid to me, so let's add some texture to them. Go to composition, new comp, and let's call this Venetian blinds because that's the effect that we are going to add to this. Create a new solid, Control Y, OK. Go to Effect, Transition, Venetian blinds. Switch on the transparency for a while, and let's change the transition completion to 60%, direction to 90%, 90 degrees, and the width, we need it to be fairly fine, so let's change this to 4. Go back to your glitch effects composition and drag in the Venetian blinds layer on the top of this. It might be darkened a little bit because half of the pixels are not visible now. So let's add another solid above this and let's give it a glow. Go to Effect, Stylize, Glow, and change this to an adjustment layer as well. Okay, if you preview this now, you'll see that we have a nice glitch background that we have created. Let's go ahead and create a few more. Go to Composition, New Comp. Let's call this BG2. Let's import a black solid to this. Give it another fractal noise. Change the soft linear to block. And the contrast, let's increase the contrast a little bit. Decrease the brightness. Go to Transform. And let's keep uniform scaling the way it is and increase the scale a little bit. And let's animate the evolution with the time expression, time into 1000. Enter. Okay, so now we have this animating fractal noise. Duplicate this layer and collapse the first one. Let's change the values on this a little bit. Contrast can be higher for this one. Brightness can be lower. Go to your transform and change the scale all the way up to maybe 1100, or maybe 1000 is good. Complexity, reduce this to 3.8. Go to subsettings and change the influence to 90, or let's change it to 82. If you click on the layer and press E twice, you will see every property that has been animated with an expression. So let's reduce this to 800. Go to your toggle switches and modes. If you can't see the track matte option over here, press toggle switches and modes. It switches between these two options. You can even do the same with the F4 key on the keyboard. And give this a luma matte. Let's preview this. Alright, so we have another glitch effect that is animating in sort of an organic fashion. That was our second background. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's move on to the third background. Go to composition, new comp, BG3. Okay. Let's import the black solid to the timeline. Let's create a fractal noise. Let's do the ritual. Fractal type will be basic. Fractal noise will be block again. I'm taking a lot of these block fractal noises because they make things look cool and kind of tech and sci-fi if you see it in a particular way. Change the contrast to 700. Brightness, bring it down to 75. Transform, switch off uniform scaling. Scale width to 3500. Height to 200, and animate evolution with time expression again, time into 1500, and let's give this a wave warp effect now. Let's go to effect, distort, wave warp. Change the sign to square and change the height to 40. Direction will be 0 since we need it to be horizontal rather than vertical. And the speed will also be 0. Go to pinning and click on all edges since we don't want that to break at the sides of it. Duplicate the wave warp and change the width for this to 55. Duplicate the layer and change the fractal settings for this one. Contrast will be 450. Brightness will be minus 115. Uniform scaling will be off. The width can be 2000. And the height will be 1670. Click on the lower layer and change the track matte to luma matte. Import another black solid and give it another fractal noise. This time we'll change the fractal type to smeary and noise type to soft linear. Keep it to soft linear default. And invert this. Let's change the contrast to 405 and the brightness to minus 360. Go to transform, uniform scaling is fine, and change the complexity to 202.5. Go to evolution options and alt click on the stopwatch for random seed and put in the time expression, time into 30. If you preview this, you will notice that you get this noise, random noise on this. Let's add a tritone to this. Go to effect, color correction, tritone. The highlights will be white. The shadows can be a very dark gray. And the midtones can be a fairly light gray. And change the mode of this to add. Let's preview this. Let's go to the lowermost layer and add a tritone to this as well. Go to effect, color correction, tritone, and let's change this to a blue color. Alrighty, that looks interesting. So that was our third background, and remember that the way we are creating this, you can alter any of the settings of any of the effects that we're using and you will get completely different and interesting results out of it. Let's move on to background number 4. That one's a bit different and interesting. Alright, the next background will be a little more fun because it's going to look different than these blocky backgrounds that we've been creating all this while. Let's go to composition, new comp, let's call this BG4. Okay. Let's import the black solid to this, take this out of the solids, and add a fractal noise again. Change this to block again. It starts with a block. Go to contrast, change this to 445 and bring down the brightness to 160, minus 160. Go to transform, turn off uniform scaling, change the width to 1400 and the height to 50. Go to the sub settings, change the influence to 80, 80 is good, and the subscaling keep it to 56, and let's give this another expression on the evolution time into 2000. Let's add a turbulent displace to this. Go to effect, distort, turbulent displace. Change the displacement to cross displacement, and the amount, you can go crazy with this. This can be around 800, and the size, you can reduce this. 29 is good. You will notice a very different kind of glitch effect. This is more of an analog glitch effect rather than the digital looking ones that we've been working on before this. Now, to make things more interesting, you can collapse everything and pre-compose this by pressing Ctrl-Shift-C on your keyboard. Let's call this glitch pre-comp 4. And then you can duplicate the layer a couple of times. Let's give this a tint effect. Go to effect, color correction, tint, and then change the white to red. Copy this effect and paste it on the other 2 layers as well. Go to the middle layer and change this to green, full green. Blue can be 0 if you want. And then go to the lowermost layer and change this to blue. Green can be 0 this time. Open up the position property by pressing P on your keyboard and offset these layers slightly, just ever so slightly from each other. $950, and this can be $965. Select all the layers and change the mode to screen. Alright, so now you have this RGB split background with this wavy analog looking warped effect. That's another interesting look that you can achieve with these effects. This can also be used as an overlay on footages. Experiment with your own stuff, and let's go for the final background now. Okay, let's create one more background. This will be the final background in this tutorial. Go to composition, new comp, BG5. Let's import a black solid to the timeline, fractal noise, change noise type to block again, contrast, change it to 340, brightness to 85, go to transform, keep uniform scaling and change the scale to 33. Bring down the complexity, 1.5 is good, and animate the evolution again with a time expression into 2000. Enter. Then duplicate this black solid Let's change this fractal noise. Contrast can come down to 150, 160. Brightness can be -4. Go to transform, switch off uniform scaling, change the width to 2900 and height to 34. Go to effect, color correction, tritone. The highlights can be light blue. The midtones can be a bit of a yellowish, dark yellow color. And the shadows can be another different color. Okay. Go to effect, stylize, mosaic, and change the horizontal blocks to 1 and the vertical blocks to 30. Sharp colors will be off this time. Then let's go to effect, color correction, and let's give this a curves adjustment layer. And for the RGB of this, let's make it really contrasty. Extremely contrasty. Okay, let's duplicate the solid and remove all the effects on this except for fractal noise. Change the contrast to 338 and the brightness to 85. Go to transform, switch on uniform scaling and change this to 34. Complexity, change this to 1.4. Rest everything is fine. Now switch off these first two layers and pre-compose this last layer. Select the layer and press Ctrl Shift C to pre-compose it. Let's call it Glitch Effects 2. Now add the displacement solid on top of this. Switch on these two layers and switch this glitch effects layer off. Go to displacement layer, add displacement map to it. Change this to glitch effects 2. Make sure you have this as an adjustment layer. Then go to your maximum horizontal displacement and alt click on the stopwatch and let's give this a wiggle expression. Wiggle 100, 200. Enter. Now as you can see, we're already getting a different kind of displacement on this. Click on this layer and change this to a luma matte. Let's preview this. Okay, go to the displacement layer and click on wrap pixels around so that it's seamless. It doesn't look like the edges are broken there. Let's add another instance of this displacement and bring in a couple of displacement maps that we've created before this and change these to displacement map 1 just to add more grungy pattern to this, and bring in another solid. Let's rename this to CC and add another curves adjustment layer to this. Color correction, curves. Make this an adjustment layer and make it even more brighter. We can also add a tritone to this. Effect, color correction, tritone, and make this red. This can be a bit darker red and this can be very red. And this can be slightly less black. Let's preview this. Alright, so that was our fifth and last background that we are creating today. So as you can see, you can just tweak a few settings to change the look of those backgrounds, and this stuff takes only a few minutes to create. Having said that, I believe this has been a fairly lengthy tutorial. Okay, so I hope you really like this one. The next tutorial will be about animating a logo intro with similar effects and backgrounds that we created in this tutorial. and I'll be adding a few more tips and tricks to that one, so don't forget to check that one out as well. And if you did like this tutorial, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot more cool stuff in the future. Until next time, Shaunuk over and out.